These awards are usually given at the National Press Club, an august venue that we really miss. We hope to be back there next April when we resume our usual spring calendar. One year, maybe 5 years in, I saw Daniel Shore, once an international correspondent with Edward R. Murrow at CBS, and later who had a great run at NPR in his late years. He was at a prime table near the podium. Before things started, I approached, hoping to coax a story out of him. Getting our prizes covered is a constant challenge. To you journalists out there, consider that a hint. I said, "You and Ron have something in common, you know. You were both on Nixon's enemies list." "Yeah," he replied curtly. "But Ron was just on Nixon's second enemies list. I was on the first." I got to know Ron Ridenhour, this B-lister, when I learned that the man who blew the whistle on My Lai, the worst known atrocity of the Vietnam War, was an investigative reporter in New Orleans, where I taught a course on the literature of the war. The theme of atrocity, of crossing a line one should never cross, was unavoidable. Each semester, Ron would mesmerize my students with his dark story, bringing to life a central theme of their readings. What made his story so compelling was the anger, still, 25 years later, and the regret. Because Ron was a humbled man who had experienced what he solemnly called an epiphany around his decision to expose the My Lai massacre, something he had to do or be complicit. Yet, for all that, he felt the true lessons of My Lai, misconstrued or long forgotten, went unheeded. Make no mistake, Ron changed history with his letter about the lines American grunts crossed, murdering 504 Vietnamese weaponless villagers, many mowed down in a ditch. The official military after-action report, it told a glowing story instead of a great American victory over 128 Viet Cong regulars with hundreds of weapons seized. In fact, there had only been 3 French colonial rifles rusty with age. After-action reports are the military's rough first draft of history. Ron's was a radical revision. America's trust in the war plummeted. Ron changed history, but he felt that, like Cassandra, the Trojan prophetess, whose predictions were always accurate but always disbelieved, that history had lost the true lessons of My Lai. Ron was adamant that the chain of command who had ordered the massacre, who had watched the 4-hour carnage from helicopters stacked above, that they could have stopped it at any time. 4 hours, the length of time we spent watching the Capitol insurrection. Remember how long that felt? In the end, 1 colonel was tried and acquitted. Only one second lieutenant, William Calley, was found guilty. Nixon soon commuted his sentence. Truth-tellers often feel like Cassandras. It takes a while to get heard, and sometimes you're put on an enemies list, lose your livelihood or your pension, or worst of all, the thing you put your life on the line for is forgotten or misconstrued. For Ron, the military learned the wrong lessons from My Lai and from the war in general. For Ron, no, My Lai wasn't about bad apples, but about illegal orders. No, getting rid of the draft wasn't the solution. We need citizen soldiers like Ron himself to be there, to bear witness. And we need journalists with open access to the fields of battle, not small pools of reporters who must follow strict guidelines. And no, delegating the trigger fingers to surrogates wasn't the solution. For Ron El Mozote in El Salvador, the slaughter of 800 villagers was a prime example. The Perps? The Atlacatl Battalion, trained at the U.S. Army School of the Americas and funded by the Iran-Contra affair. One village, one atrocity among many, and many laws broken by the Reagan administration. Finally, if the Pentagon decided the problem was boots on the ground, bad apples like Callie or good apples like Ron, to that Ron said, no, the solution is not the new American way of war, highly developed, detached technologies that led to the aerial and naval bombardment of Iraq in the first Gulf War, shock and awe in the second Gulf War, and now the drone wars in Iraq, Somalia, Yemen, and who knows where else. Here's another reason we need to heed the Cassandras in our midst. In 1996, Ron reported a piece for NBC's Dateline on the militia movement. In Ron's view, Timothy McVeigh's bombing of the Oklahoma City Federal Building was not the explosive end of the militia movement. It was a beginning of something. What Ron reported was that the militia movement was first inspired and funded by Governor Ronald Reagan and then supported by President Reagan. At the time, Ron's piece struck me as a little nutty. As it turned out, as we've now seen, Ron nailed the story on the emerging right-wing militia movement and its roots in conservative politics, 25 years before the January 6th insurgency. Ron was dogged. He stayed on it, all to say we need to trust our whistleblowers and investigative reporters. We need to support them. Did Ron make a difference? One answer I'd like to think are these annual prizes that celebrate truth-telling wherever we find it. Before he died, Ron heard an affirmative answer from something of an oracular voice. On a panel with Cy Hirsch, who first reported Ron's story in the press, David Halberstam quoted Emerson, "If one good man plant himself upon his conscience, the whole world will come round." Then David pointed a finger at Ron and said, "You are that one good man." The Ridenhour Prizes exist to make sure that Cassandras get heard so that the third draft of history gets told. I welcome this year's prize winners, Cariel Horn, Jose Andres, Ramona Diaz, and Claudio Sant, into the Ridenhour family. Because that's what you did. That's what you do. Tell truths that people often don't want to hear or would like to forget. Thank you.